And welcome back to the Cover 3 podcast here on CBS Sports. That's Danny Cannell. That's Bud Elliott. I'm Chip Patterson coming to you live at youtube.com/cover3 and everywhere you get your podcasts on demand. Thanks for hanging out. Smash that subscribe, smash the like, and come and join us in the chat, a.k.a. the Cover 3 tailgate. And I love that we always have. Right now, I see Caleb in there, just firing up the tailgate, letting them know what time it is, and saying, yes, we see everybody who's sitting here watching live. So while you're here, do us a favor, hit that like. We appreciate it in advance. We apologize for the late start. We had to put our cupcakes away. We had to make sure that all the lemonades from the class party was all put away so we could go, because it's Danny Cannell's 50th birthday. Happy birthday, DK. Just how's the day going so far? What do we have on tap? And yes, it has been approved. You do not have to do the instant reaction show tonight. You get your birthday off from reacting to the college football playoff rankings. How we doing?
That's why you guys are the best around. It's been a great day so far. It is a big one. 45 is a big number. It's a key number, as we like to talk about the gambling parlance.
Right?
If you use Wikipedia, you can probably find out the truth on that one. I tried to delete that from the internet. But on the morning show, you guys left a great message for the radio show that Dusty and I do on Sirius XM. I love that. That was great. We had a lot of surprise guests throughout. Greg Sankey joined the show. So that was pretty cool from him to come on the show. He spent like 20 minutes with us. It was fun to get him on for the birthday, but I was trying to hey, we could break some news on here and have some, make it a really good birthday if you want to do that. And he was very forthright. It was great talking about the future of college football, the SEC. And, he kind of said two things that resonated, because I was like, hey, realignment. I know you can't tell me Florida State's getting an invite to the SEC, but, what does it look like in 5 years? And he basically said, I don't think realignment is the bigger story. He said, I think legislation is the bigger story. Like what does Congress, what does the sport look like from a NIL pay the players structure look like? It really is worth going to listen to. I'm not trying to pump another show, but if you get Sirius XM, you can listen on the app. And then the other thing that I thought was big was, asked him about Michigan and the scandal that's taken place, and what are you going to do to prevent that? Because it's embarrassing for the Big Ten. All this does not make anybody look good. And I'm like, how are you going to prevent that? And he's like, essentially, we're going to have communication to the helmets next year. He didn't guarantee that, but you could just tell between the lines. Duh, why wouldn't we do that? It's been a long time coming. This will be the final straw. So it was fun getting him on there. He had some fun with my SEC, anti-SEC rhetoric, which of course he always has. But I have a tremendous amount of respect for him. He's, the most powerful guy in our sport. And, I think he should be, if we ever get to a place where maybe in 5 years, these TV deals go down, and there's one big entity, I think he'd be the perfect commissioner for our sport. So I don't think it's that far-fetched either to think that he could assume that position one day, and I think he'd be great for it.
Did you see? All right. So did you see that Notre Dame has a new TV deal? Speaking of that.
Like in the last week? Or
yeah. Notre Dame on Saturday announced a new TV deal with NBC. It was the old deal was set to expire after 2024. And the deal expires in 2029. Which is more or less in line with when the Big Ten is up again. Huh. Boys, I think we found D-Day. I think when the Great Schism might be occurring. So, not like a huge headline. We don't need to dive into it. Again, we're not going to do an emergency podcast from Notre Dame announcing a new TV deal. But, when Greg Sankey's telling you on the radio show, down the line, things will look different. When Nebraska Athletic Director Trev Alberts is like, yeah, y'all need to be ready because the next shift is going to be the big one and it's going to be dramatic. I think that the Notre Dame re-up being in line and in lockstep with all these things, I think we've kind of identified that, which in one sense, you could just, be worried about it forever. But in the other sense, it's like, okay, let's enjoy what we got here for the next little half decade or so. And then we'll see what the future looks like. Things we want to get to today, obviously, big game breakdown as we would normally do on Wednesday, doing it here on Tuesday, taking a deeper dive into Michigan, Ohio State, the Iron Bowl, Oregon, and Oregon State in the Civil War, and then maybe a few other matchup notes from across Week 13. Any thoughts about what we're expecting in the college football playoff release? And wanted to at least start with this one. Didn't get a chance to hit it yesterday, but Cam Rising says he's back. for the 2024 season. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's going to be 7 seasons of being a part of college football for Cam Rising.
Oh, by the way, with Rising back, there is a potential that all 11 starters for Utah are back next year on offense. Good luck.
Big 12. Yeah.
That I think is probably the most interesting aspect of this, because it is going to be easier to win than the Pac-12. Like,
yes,
undoubtedly easier. I mean, Arizona might have something to say about that. Arizona State, like these other teams from the Pac-12 coming in, Oklahoma State, like, but it's going to be like, if that's the case with the success they've had, wouldn't you expect them to be preseason favorite to win it?
They'll be one of the preseason favorites. Kansas State will be pretty heavily, liked a lot. If Dion gets a whole bunch of like actual Louis in the portal with Shador, like they could be a threat. I mean, they have to. They're not 7 or 8 guys away. They're probably more like 14 to 16.
15,
but like the 2 they have are freaking studs. So Texas Tech has pretty good NIL. They recruit well. Like I don't think they've fallen off quite as much as people think. They just last year was close game luck. That'll be a really interesting conference next year. I mean, Kansas, if Daniels comes back and is healthy, their defensive talent probably can't get worse, and that's a good coaching staff if they stay. The new Big 12 is so fascinating because you don't have the bottom of the Big 12 like the Pac-12. Like you're not going to get like a Stanford level team, I don't think, in the new Big 12. But you also don't get the top level teams. Like none of those teams are legitimately top 10 level for the most part, except for maybe Utah.
Right.
So.
Do you think that we will see as the COVID year cycles out? Or are we going to be? Is this going to be the end? Is Cam Rising going to be one of our last like true JT Daniels-esque journeymen that we have in the sport, just based on that getting that 1 year of eligibility cycled out of the system?
Kind of. So I think the latest we'll have guys play is like 2026. So follow me here. If you played as a freshman in 20, that doesn't count against you. And then you were to have redshirted in like 21. Let's say you play 22, 23, 24. Maybe you get like a bad injury there in one of those. So you get like a medical redshirt type thing. And then you're able to play one in 26. But for the most part, I think we have maybe 25 will be the last year where we have like a significant number of these 7th year quarterbacks, maybe a couple in 26, but I'll be surprised.
And so like that counts as one of their 85. Are there any bonus scholarships?
No, it still counts against the 85. If you want the kid, you got to carry him on your roster.
See, I don't know. It's probably not that big a deal, but it does take away from most likely a high school kid that probably could have gotten a scholarship, or somebody else that was younger. Like that's the thing I think is the unintended consequence of, because I hate COVID. I think it screwed a lot of teams. I think it screwed a lot of conferences. Pac-12, like now that we're further and further removed, look how much success they're having. They were devastated by COVID. So like, I don't want to say I'm upset at Cam Rising for coming back, but I think the unintended consequence have been a lot of high schoolers have lost opportunity that might have been scholarship kids, like Friends, 3 stars, maybe would have been a good, quarterback guy for Utah. And they're like, well, we've already got 3 or 4 scholarship quarterbacks. And now you got them coming back. Like that could prevent them from making an offer.
Well, Danny, also think about like junior colleges, right? Carl Reed's been all over this. He's like, look, these high school players have to go somewhere. And with the Power 5 schools taking, on average 4 or 5 fewer players, that adds up quite a bit. And then the G5s are doing the same. So I don't think we've ever had more talent in terms of like young talent at the FCS and the junior college, and maybe trickle down to like some of the best D2 levels, because you got to go somewhere. And like, I know some coaches out there to think that like the JUCOs this year are kind of loaded because dudes have gone to JUCO for 2 years instead of going to, because there weren't high school spots.
Again, that is how you get Cam Rising able to come back for a 7th year. And again, with Utah making that move to the Big 12, a significant one, as the Utes will join the conference as one of the favorites. Bud, you sent over a note that we talked a lot about Arkansas, which, by the way, I saw a comment and I didn't know if it was a compliment or a criticism, but said, wow, 30 minutes on Syracuse and Arkansas. That's amazing. And you know what? It is amazing, because that is the kind of equal opportunity podcast that we have here. because we really, really care about all these programs, and we are very interested about the future. You know, whether you are making a move like Syracuse did with Dino Babers, or whether you are standing by your head coach in a hot seat situation like Arkansas did with Sam Pittman. So you'd mentioned that there was another follow-up on Arkansas. What have you learned, or what's on your mind?
Yeah, so I thought we did a really good Arkansas segment yesterday. I know it got spread around like Arkansas Twitter and Arkansas. I saw it on Hog Sports, so shout out Hog Sports. You know, Trey does such a good job over there with that site. And I had mentioned that Hunter Yurosek made the hire of Chad Morris. I've been informed that's not true. However, I didn't make that up out of whole cloth. It's literally on Arkansas's website where he's getting credit for it, for signing off on it. But they also, at the time, before he took over, they had an interim AD, Julie Cromer Peoples, and she kind of gets more of the credit / blame for the Chad Morris hire. It seems like it was more Yurisek's not getting dinged for the Chad Morris hire, as I understand it. Like, it's understood that he didn't really make that hire. I just want to tell Arkansas fans, like, I didn't make that up. It's literally on your website. We'll put it in the show notes. Like, he's getting credit for it.
Then he also,
but also he nailed the basketball and baseball hires. So that's the other part. Like, people are happy with him for that.
He had the quick trigger. Chad Morris, well, I believe, I'm pulling this off the top of my head, I believe it was Chad Morris and Willie Taggart in the same firing season, and neither of them completed their second year. And that was one time where it was a sort of a landscape shifting moment for me, where I was like, whoa, we've got multiple Power 5 coaches that are not even able to make it to the conclusion of their second season, and you're just already ripping the trigger. We're pulling the trigger, ripping the Band-Aid off. That's a significant change in the way that we look at these situations.
I also, like, the comment section thinks that the Syracuse and Arkansas stuff was a compliment. And I think it is. Like, what we lose in search, I think we gain in loyalty from, like, fan bases. We're not going to talk about you every week, but there's some shows that just will never talk about you. Right. So we'll do it if it's an interesting story.
All right. Quick note on the big boys. What do we expect from the playoff rankings tonight?
I think Washington will probably jump the Noles.
Yeah.
Because they picked up a top 25 win over Oregon State. I don't think it's a Jordan Travis thing. I mean, we were saying this last week as well. Which is why I think they did not do it last week, because they're like, hey, if Washington beats Oregon State, we'll move them. If not, no real need to move them.
We were talking before the show, because I totally agree with you. I mean, I've been waiting. I almost expected it last week. The way the committee's viewed, some of these wins, but a game against North Alabama is not even close to having a resume builder like a road win against the top 15 opponent. So totally expect that to happen. Do you think there's any chance Washington could jump Ohio State or Michigan? Because I think Washington's resume is better, but at the same time, like, when I say that, like, what's the point? They're going to play each other. One of them's going to drop below. And if Washington wins the Apple Cup, they'll just go one more notch above. So there's no real advantage to doing it now. But I think that's like, while Michigan and Ohio State were playing, subpar opponents, similarly, like, we're talking about, it's not an FCS program, but they were heavy favorites, and one of them struggled. Like, is there any chance? I don't think there is, but I think it would be. If I was in that room and you were going strictly resume based, like, are we really giving Washington credit for their resume with a couple wins over current, top 15 teams? It's a stronger resume. And not to mention, the conference top to bottom is way deeper than the Big Ten. So even as they've gotten into conference play, like, the mid-tier Pac-12 wins are more impressive than mid-tier Big Ten wins.
If we're discussing this in the committee room, I agree with you. If we're projecting what this year's committee is going to do, I don't think that's the case. I think they've been slow on Washington. We thought that Washington might make that move before they got a road win against Oregon State. We saw both Georgia and Michigan very highly ranked way before they had any ranked wins. Like, when we were just like, Georgia, which the best win is Kentucky and the second best win is Florida. And they're still ranked much higher than I would have expected if we were just going on resume. So the fact that there was so much built in there for the Bulldogs and the Wolverines since the rankings started getting released on October 31st, the fact that they've been a little bit slow to the take to move Washington up, I'm going to guess no. But then there's also just maybe the explicit or implicit bias of they're playing each other Saturday. Leave them at 2-3. We'll figure it out from there. But I thought Ohio State's win against Minnesota, eye test wise, is going to mean they stay at number 2. Michigan stays at number 3. Washington moves up to 4. Florida State down to 5. And then I'm not anticipating any other changes beyond that. Not inside the top.
Yeah, I mean they'll move stuff around to support their argument, right? Like let's remember 6 through 25 exists to justify whatever they do 1 through 4.
Again,
if Tennessee's in the top 25, I might go to Grapevine and boycott the final rankings. I mean, Tennessee has no business. I mean, they're in the AP top 25. I think they'll drop out.
How do you do this with Sankey on your show today, man?
I know, but I mean, I think even Greg Sankey, as much as he was, and he was pretty, he's like, hey, I'm rooting for the Gators to beat Florida State. Like he's Mr. SEC. He has to be. I think even he would be like, yeah, I don't know if Tennessee, like who have they beaten? Like they just have 4 losses to SEC programs. That is their only, we get it. But they have no business being in the top 25. Even Jordan, you don't even get the boos from him because he knows our producer, who is a Tennessee guy, that I'm right. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever.
I will believe that it is more direct in terms of building the back to represent the front, or building the back to represent the front, or the bottom to represent the top, if UNLV ends up sneaking in as a ranked win for Michigan. Okay? If you put UNLV in, then I'm going to say, all right, bud, you're right. Because I believe it's just one of those things that in your mind, if you believe that these are the best teams in the country, then you are subconsciously just not going to punish these teams for losing to them. You're going to think they're better because you're like, oh, they're not that bad because that team is so good. I think some of that happens naturally rather than more direct. But again, that Tennessee would be one where I'd be like, okay, UNLV would be another. I'd be like, okay, feels like they're about 4 or 5 spots higher than they should be. Maybe that's just to justify the top and help them out and give them another ranked win or so. But
do you think, because I know Reese Davis will ask him this, Reese is a pro, and Florida State's going to be a topic. Do you think he'll allude to anything, Boo Corrigan or the committee, that they're, considering looking at Florida State differently?
Oh,
because Jordan Travis isn't there?
Yeah, and the answer he's going to give is going to be easy. It's going to be like, look, there's no reason for us to project how Florida State will play without Jordan Travis. We will just watch it like the committee did in 2014 with Cardale Jones.
And like you mentioned on CBS Sports Network, Danny, on Monday's HQ Spotlight, it's good opponents, right?
Yeah.
He's going to go play against Florida and Louisville. And Florida's down bad, but I mean, we're talking about, capable athletes and, a level of talent that is a good test for any quarterback. So if he makes it through it, then it is a credit to Mike Norvell and the roster that he's built, that while Jordan Travis is a record-setting Knoll for life, this could be a good reflection on the Seminoles' depth.
But I don't think it should matter how he even looks. I think if Tate Rodemaker throws 2 interceptions and he throws for 110 yards, but they win, I don't think it should matter. And if they do the same thing against Louisville and he has another 2 picks and he throws for 115 yards and they win, I don't think it should matter. Missouri should have lost to Florida. They got off the field in a 4th and 18 and they get a game-winning kick. Well, you think Missouri's going to get that held against them? No, they're probably going to jump up a spot. I don't think it matters because it is a team game. If you win, if you find other ways to win. Now, hopefully that doesn't happen. I don't think it does. I actually think he plays pretty well. But, you got to win first. We're having all this conversation. If they lose, it's a moot point. But if they win and win out, I don't think it should matter how Tate Rodemaker plays. Because that would mean defense is getting stops. Trey Benson's running. There's other things happening in order for them to win where I don't think it should matter.
I think it matters on the margins. Let's keep in mind the playoff is a TV product. The networks run this sport. They have to keep the conferences happy somewhat. So the other leagues aren't going to be cool with hey, 2 SEC or 2 Big Ten going over an undefeated conference, Power 5 conference team that looks decent, that looks okay. If you're winning these games because you have a special team score and a defensive score and the offense is just an abomination twice 2 weeks in a row, then I think they have to do some projecting. But if you come out and you win both games and you don't look terrible on offense, then I think the guys in the room be like, all right, this is an undefeated Power 5 champion. They smoked LSU much more than Bama did at a neutral site as opposed to, a home game. They have, 8 wins over bowl teams? 9? Like a pretty good number there. So, although the Florida would not be a bowl team if they're still undefeated, so 7. If Louisville beats Kentucky, that'll be like a top 7 win. They don't need to look awesome. I think they can't look terrible on offense and still make it. We did mention the odds from a different network or a different sports book that doesn't sponsor us the other day on them to make the playoff. That plus 260 got hit. I bet a little bit of that. It got knocked down to plus 145. So if you run like the money line odds on FSU to win out, there's like probably a 7 or 8% chance that they get left out if they're undefeated, based on like the odds of them winning out versus the odds that Vegas currently has to make the playoffs. So it's, I think, rather small, but non-zero.
Yeah, I would say that it will you say on the margins, it probably caps what seed in the playoff Florida State's going to get.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, I would be shocked if they make it and they're not
3 or 4
facing Georgia.
Right. Exactly. All right. Coming up on the other side, normally on a Wednesday, but today on a Tuesday, we go inside the matchups, and we're going to begin with one of the biggest ones, not just of the week, but of the whole daggum year. Michigan and Ohio State. Where will this game be decided? We'll get into that and more next.
It's never too soon for college hoops. It's the Emerald Coast Classic on CBS Sports Network.
Back here on the Cover 3 podcast. The Locks show is so busy. We don't always have time to get really inside all the different layers. And some of the big games of every week, they deserve that. That's why we give it a little spotlight. Big game breakdown. Ohio State, 2-game losing streak to the Michigan Wolverines. All that dominance for all that time. Ryan Day, pair of losses to Jim Harbaugh. Jim Harbaugh, all that losing to Ohio State during his time as head coach of the Wolverines, now with a little bit of a leg up on his rival coach from Columbus. The game is in Ann Arbor. There's a lot of stuff packed into this. Oh, and Jim Harbaugh won't even get credit for it. Sharon Moore, good luck. Good chance for you to continue to build your win-loss record as the Michigan head coach. Danny, where do you want to start here? Which part of this matchup do you think is bouncing around your head the most when trying to figure out how it's going to go?
Let's start with the quarterbacks. I mean, it's the obvious one. Being a former quarterback, I do think this one has, some really interesting intrigue to those two players because of kind of where they stand now, like as we speak. I mean, I just gave the other day, Day Trade and Danny was ready to sell J.J. McCarthy as a, national championship winning quarterback. Can he win this game? I absolutely think he can. I don't think he has to throw for 300, but can he hit those 1 or 2 key plays, which he's done in the past in this game, that are going to be afforded to him? And are they going to be able to step up and do it? So he kind of comes limping into this game, confidence-wise, not his best performance, didn't have to do anything against Penn State. And then Kyle McCord, all of a sudden in 2 blowouts, which J.J. McCarthy had early in the season. Remember, J.J. McCarthy looked like a Heisman Trophy winner when he was playing against Minnesota and Michigan State too. And so he comes in, McCord does, with a lot more confidence. So, I'm very curious to see, which one of these ones are more comfortable in this game, which one can hit the big plays, which one doesn't make the big mistake. And I would almost say, even though, that dynamic of where they're coming into this game, I still trust J.J. McCarthy because I think he'll have a stronger run game. They've been able to control the line of scrimmage. But, man, Kyle McCord's got Marvin Harrison Jr. He's got the greatest equalizer in the sport where you can almost screw up and throw it into the wrong coverage, double coverage, and he's going to make a play. Or they could have a play drawn up hey, you've got safety help over the top, but he just kind of splits them and you're able to just throw it past everybody and he goes and gets it. That's the type of dynamic that comes into play. So quarterbacks, clearly huge impact. I think the other big storyline is just physicality. How does Ohio State stack up. They've been challenged. You heard the frustration in Ryan Day's voice after they beat Notre Dame. No one, Coach Holt said, we can't do this. We proved to the world we can stack up. Well, how do they handle the physicality? Because I wouldn't be surprised if there is a stretch where Sharon Moore, I don't think it's 30, but I think you can see 8 or 9 runs in a row, like until they stop you. Like, go ahead. We're like, that is the mindset that I think Michigan holds, and it's an advantage they hold over Ohio State. We dominate you guys. We own you physically. You're going to have to stop us.
Yeah, I mean, look, this line is getting to 3 now, which basically implies they're a coin flip on a neutral field. Is that a market upgrade of Ohio State, or is it a market downgrade of Michigan? I think it's clearly the latter.
Oh.
I mean, maybe we can argue Ohio State's been better in recent weeks. Henderson being healthier helps. McCord's just not a good quarterback, but Day, I think, is an elite play caller, and really and they do have special weapons at receiver. Obviously, Harrison, Egbuka, Henderson, big time. But there are some concerns I have with Ohio State's offense here. They have only played, 3 D lines that are have real pros on them in numbers. Notre Dame, which whipped them. Penn State, which Penn State's D line was much better than Ohio State's offensive line. They just threw it up to Harrison 18 times, and he caught 12 of them.
Yeah.
And Wisconsin gave him some trouble as well. All through the preseason, we were concerned about this Ohio State offensive line. They had to go to the portal, to try to get multiple starters. It was not a good portal year for offensive linemen. So how will Ohio State's offensive line hold up against this Michigan defensive front, which I do think is really good? If this plays out like the last 3 times this offensive line has had to face defensive lines with real pros, then Ohio State's going to have problems. Michigan's secondary, I don't think, is quite as good as maybe it looked earlier in the season. And if Ohio State's offensive line can give them some time, I do have a lot of trust in Ryan Day to scheme stuff up, even though I don't think McCord is very good. I think Day is an underappreciated play caller. So can they find ways to get their playmakers the ball and minimize the pass rush for Michigan? Because Michigan has real dudes up front. And there's sort of a breaking point where it's okay, we can operate against this, this, and this, but when we play a really elite level of defensive line, can we block it? I don't know. Honestly, I would give Ohio State's offensive line a rather failing grade with the 3 good defensive lines they faced so far this year. On the flip side, man, Michigan ain't blocked anybody the last 2 weeks. So at least not in the pass pro.
No pass blocked.
Yeah. What's the status of their offensive linemen? Have you got any update on them? Because they lost 2 of them, right, against Maryland?
I thought the right tackle's going to play. I know that Sharon Moore said that Wilson, the receiver, is likely to play. So I don't have much of a track record on him. There's some coaches I know just lie like crazy, right? Mm-hmm. And there's some coaches who I generally trust when I watch their pressers. I don't really have a track record on Sharon Moore if he's honest about injuries and pressers or not. So I guess we'll see there. I mean, Ohio State's got a good defense, guys.
Yeah, see, to me, that's where I think that you're looking at a situation where if both defensive lines have an advantage against both offensive lines, then we start to move to, okay, if it's going to be lower scoring, if it's going to be really tough, who's hitting the explosive plays? Buckeyes have the hammer. They've got they might only need, they don't need 12 catches for 168 yards, but they might need 6 or 7 big ones. And if they can get that, if they can get them in the right moments, then I'm not surprised to see this. What was it? Started at 4 and now it's moving the other way. Of course, I'm sure that Sharps are going to probably wait for it to get as low as possible and then hammer Michigan on game day all the way out to 5. I mean, what's your expectation? This is going to get traded all around, right?
Yeah, I don't think it's going to go back to 5. But it probably 3.5. It'll trade. It won't go under 3 unless some injury information leaks or something. Is McCarthy healthy?
No,
he looks dinged.
He is.
Yeah.
I think he is.
I think they might need his legs in this because Michigan's receivers are not they're not special. They don't suck, but they're not great. And I think you do need McCarthy and his ability to move around some here. I don't know. Like, we can say Michigan has not had to show anything the last 2 weeks, and that's factual. Like, they've been able to just play defense and run the ball. But, I mean, we're at week 13, and we have some uncertainty, I think is the right word, about this Michigan passing game. We don't know if it's there, if they need it.
The other thing too with McCord, he has not been good, under pressure. And when I say like blitz pressure, and is Michigan home crowd, tough to hear the snap. Do they try to get after him? Now you put your secondary in a bind, especially if you're going to have to man-to-man somebody with Marvin Harrison Jr. But then you play that game, that race. Can we get to him before he can get the ball off and, impact his ability to get it there? Because if they don't, I think they will. I think they will try to pressure him. I think Jesse Minter will try to dial up some pressures and get home. Because to me, like we were just talking, that one of the biggest, like you've got the neutralizer, you got the equalizer with Marvin Harrison Jr. But if you cannot get it to him, that to me is the best defense for it. And McCord, we haven't seen him run around that much either. Like we're talking about McCarthy needing to use his legs. I don't know if McCord has that dimension. So I would expect some pressure from Michigan.
Michigan's run defense is excellent. I do think but to go back to your earlier thing, when I answered both, I think the upgrade of Ohio State's offense has to do with Trevion Henderson 100% healthy, running well, and Ryan, and probably a little bit of also Ryan Day working with Kyle McCord, working with the offense and trying to figure out, okay, I am Ryan Day. I probably have a Jimbo Fisher size notebook of different things that I would want to do with all these different weapons that I have. And we have to pare this way down. So Ryan Day is a play caller, is a game planner, being able to get sort of into his comfort zone. Again, I recognize that we are talking about, the way that they have played against Wisconsin, Rutgers, Michigan State, Minnesota. It is not, anything close to the level of defense like a Penn State or a Notre Dame. But I do think that it is the reason why you would upgrade it, is because Henderson seems fresh. Henderson seems like he's running hard, and it does seem like they understand what they want to do to complement a defense that I do think is still probably 1 to 11, the more consistent side of the football than what Ohio State has offensively. I've been upgrading Ohio State because I feel like they've answered some questions even against lesser competition. And then, like you mentioned with McCarthy, he's hobbling around out there, man. And it's gutsy, it's gritty, but that you have to acknowledge that there is not going to be the best you could possibly get out of McCarthy in that situation.
I mean, I know it seems like a very insignificant thing to you guys, I'm sure, and you're probably going to laugh when I say this, but as somebody who was incredibly superstitious, like I used to wear the same undershirt, I'd have the same pregame meal, I'd pray with our chaplain the same way every time, and with JJ, he had that little pregame routine with Harbaugh, the slap on the shoulders, then he hits him on the back. Just telling you, little thing.
To your point about bringing pressure, I think you guys nailed it. I mean, Ohio State got pressure against Penn State, and McCord had guys open and missed them, especially down there in the red zone. Like they heated them up, and he missed. Like they were just non-competitive throws. So if you're Michigan, I guess you try to do that, but you also really want to limit the explosive plays from Ohio State. I think you want to see if Ohio State can be consistent and drive the football. So you're probably hoping to get that pressure with the front four and not expose that secondary for a lot of those one-on-ones. This also could be the game they miss Harbaugh in, right? Because is there a little pucker factor with Sharon Moore, right? You're playing the blackjack card correctly, you're playing the analytics, but then you get to that situation and you've split 3 times, and you read the card, and it's like, all right, this is the time to press our edge. We need to double down on all 3 of these hands. You got the guts to do it? Because if you're the big guy, you coached in the damn Super Bowl, you don't care. You do care, but you're not feeling the pressure of
Sure.
Oh man, I'm going to get blamed for this loss. Screw that. If you're Sharon Moore, this is where having an assistant be the head coach could actually hurt you, because you got to make these critical late game close decisions. And I mean, you could pull an Andy Reid like last night and just make a decision that really, it cuts 3 or 4% off your win probability. That hurts.
Could you imagine if he just looks at his watch and it's an Apple Watch during one of those? I mean,
Sharon Moore. Like,
yeah. I mean, Harbaugh is going to be watching this thing. Oh my gosh. Could you imagine? And I wouldn't put how do you trust them? Be like, yeah, there's not going to have any input. What if there's an assistant there? Now they're not allowed to have cell phones anywhere, right? Like, cause I remember Kirk Signetti, I think he pulled out, remember the guy had the replay and was like, look on the cell phone during a game. And he actually had to apologize. Like, you're not allowed to look at cell phones.
Yeah. You're not allowed to use electronic tablets or cell phones on the sideline. That may change. We'll see.
Yeah, but you could also have your Apple Watch.
Yeah, I was going to say the Big Ten rule just says he can't be at the venue on game day.
Right. I mean, right. Exactly. Yeah. What if he is having say so?
Hey, Boston Red Sox with the Apple Watches, right?
Right. That's what made me think about it.
So if you're
they didn't win, so we don't remember him like the Astros.
So if you are an assistant coach in the coach's booth, you're not your honor code not supposed to look at a phone.
I think in the coach's booth, they're probably not giving a crap. Do you?
Well, that's how it is. You have an analyst in the booth who is just a live chat with Harbaugh.
Yeah.
Harbaugh texts.
Don't you think he's probably having some input though? I mean, I would be shocked if he's not. If he's truly not paying attention, if he's not doing anything. I would imagine and the Michigan fans probably hate us right now, but I would honestly be shocked if he was not having any input to anybody on the staff during the game. Because I don't even know. The suspension says he's not allowed to be there. Does it say in the suspension he's not allowed to communicate?
It has been 2 weeks since I read the official ruling,
same.
But the big detail that I saw was not allowed at the venue on game day. So I mean, with all of the resources that Michigan has poured into its football staffing and its scouting department, I would imagine that, there's an analyst that Jim Harbaugh can text and they can relay it to somebody who's got a headset and messages can be delivered.
Texting would take too long. You need a guy with an earpiece because like the TV copy is behind. Like you need somebody like talking out. Okay, Jim, 3rd and 8, pass for 7, fourth and 1. Let's call it, right? Like you can't afford to have the 4 or 5 second TV delay.
It also could be a quick, it could be every quarter, hey, what are we doing well? What do we need to, just an extra set of eyes? Hey, we need to work that outside zone. We need to work the counter. I saw this, I saw that.
A halftime check-in. Actually, realistically, a halftime check-in makes the most sense.
Yeah, agreed.
Trying to establish a line of communication for a 4th down call. It seems like that's creating too many wrinkles for, if Sharon Moore is going to be the next Michigan head football coach, he needs to be able to do this. So very interesting test for him.
What if Harbaugh pre-recorded a couple of different reactions and they just played the one that fits the halftime situation? If he records it on a Friday, technically he's not coaching him on Saturday. They're just delaying the message.
He'll probably be with the team at the team hotel before they go to the stadium. He'll deliver a message. He'll get to talk to him on game day.
Can he wait? Are the Michigan football offices, trying to think, they're not built into the stadium. So he's probably in the facility, just not
right
in the stadium.
In the stadium.
What about the coach on the other side of the ball? On the other sideline. What if
I got a prediction, by the way.
Yeah.
If Ryan Day, did you see the quote? He was on with a local TV, probably his weekly interview, and they were he was asked what do you think? He's like, well, now's not the time to talk about this. What's transpired? What are your the last 3 weeks? And he's like, well, now's not the time. There will be a time and a place to address all that's unfolded. I mean, what better place than after a win in the Big House? If Ryan Day goes into the Big House and wins this game, and after all the born on third base stuff that Harbaugh has thrown his way, you don't think he's going to take that opportunity to say, WWE style, you're going to curse because everybody curses on TV now. There's going to be some F-bombs. Finally, you guys see what we've been trying to overcome, and now we have a level playing field. Now that everything's the same, we're able to win. I guarantee you he's going to say something along those lines if they win. That's when it comes out. I told we've been trying to do all this. They've been cheating. We showed you what happened when things are fair. Guaranteed.
All right.
So you're saying that Lou Holtz will have gotten off easy.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And he's got something dialed up, ready to go along those lines on national television as soon as it's done. And just in case you thought there was a chance Michigan was going to backdoor their way in with a close loss, he's going to kind of shut the door on that one too.
It's just sometimes when you're leading a program doing it the right way, it could be really tough when there's other ones out there not doing it the right way.
If you didn't see the signs that we were building something on defense and we're a tough program, the signs were there, guys. You just got to see them.
Yeah. No, like I might build a
How many times do you work towards signs or signals into that response? Like at least.
It's coming.
Even if you don't object, like even if you don't just outright say, like, "Hey, screw you on an even playing field. We got you now." I think you try to work the word signs, signals. You
don't give light to Born on third base, but you definitely try to get your shot in on the way back.
Yeah,
you know?
We hit a home run today.
Yeah. Oh
Yes.
man, that's so good. Yeah, but maybe on the drive back to Raleigh on Friday morning, I'll put together a bingo board. We can see how many we can hit for Ryan Day if Ohio State wins. What if Ohio State loses, y'all?
Because did you see the fake Urban Meyer going around?
No.
Some guy put out a video, and Urban Meyer was sitting on Big Ten Network and like dissecting a play. But then the way it was presented, it quoted Urban Meyer as saying, Ryan Day has no more excuses. If he loses this one, he's got to go. Something along those lines. And like it appeared like you were quoting Urban Meyer directly from this on-camera interview. And yet, if you listen to the interview and watched it, it was like breaking down a play. It had nothing to do with it. So Urban actually from his official account said, like, I did not say this. No way or fashion or form did I say anything like this. But I don't think it's that crazy. Like if he does lose this game, and my goodness, like if it's close, maybe you get like more of a pass. But if you lose by 10 and you get run on again, boy, the cries are going to be as ludicrous as they may be. It's the only team he's lost to in the Big Ten. If he does, we just know how it's going to go.
The thing is, last year's game, there is a read of last year's game, which almost looks fluky, where you just see all these explosive plays and you're like, look, on these 6 plays, it was basically all of Michigan's offensive yards. Well, then my criticism, if you're going to use that approach is, well, then the team was unprepared. That either a coaching standpoint from game plan or a coaching standpoint in terms of getting your guys ready to go, you were unprepared if you are giving up this many explosive plays against a team with equal talent. And so if it looks like that again, then it's going to get a little bit out of hand. What do you think, Bud? What are you smiling about?
No, I just think you're right. But like, I think Day's a good coach, man. I think he knows
he's a
what
great
doing.
coach.
I think he's a good play caller. Like I don't know. Like if there's a job that you can argue like you really can't screw up, it's sort of Ohio State. Like you got to be pretty bad. Like they're never bad. Sometimes they're not great, but like they're never bad. I think Day does a really good job. So
I don't, and I want to make it clear. Like I'm saying the reaction from Ohio State fans is going to be what we just discussed. I'm not saying he should be on the hot seat. I don't think he should be fired. I'm just saying there will be a faction of Ohio State fans who are like, oh, this isn't the guy. And, you know, he had urban players when he had his best years, and the further removed are, I mean, you just know the narrative, how it's going to go.
Man, I agree, but it's also like, man, they were a kick away from playing for the national championship last year.
Yeah. They
just had to send out a Carolina kicker. You know, if they didn't send out a former UNC kicker, then, you know, maybe it would have been different. But no, that's what you're left with. All right. Big game breakdown ain't even close to done. So coming up on the other side, taking a look at the Iron Bowl, Oregon State, and some big matchup notes from Florida State, Florida, and more next.
The Scudetto, where the soul of Italy meets the pinnacle of calcio. Catch Serie A on CBS Sports Network and streaming live on Paramount+.
Back here on the Cover 3 podcast and 3:30 p.m. Eastern Time. It is the SEC on CBS Game of the Week. It is the Iron Bowl from Jordan-Hare Stadium, the site of New Mexico State's win against Auburn, but also the site of Auburn wins against Alabama in 2013, in 2017, in 2019, and in 2021, almost getting it done, 24-22 in extra time. So, if you're subscribed to the Cover 3 podcast on TikTok, on Instagram, then you might have already seen Marquee Cover 3 play, which is doing pretty well, 16-8 so far. Had another 4-2 week last week. Yeah, I took Alabama. I laid all the points. I started doing more prep for the show. I feel very bad about laying all those points. I am less certain about it, but I've got nothing to be uncertain about it except for vibes. So, is there an X's and O's path to Auburn being able to have this be another game that maybe not an outright upset, but maybe like 2021, much closer than expected? Because again, all the way back to 2013, there's only been 1 year, that 2015 season, where the game in Jordan-Hare Stadium was not incredibly competitive. This point spread at more than 14.5 suggests it will not be competitive.
Are you saying that maybe you don't believe that Alabama's offense is totally fixed? Like maybe some of this offensive explosion is because LSU had all 4 of their corners and their best defensive linemen out? Like, could it be that maybe it's not completely fixed? Or maybe Kentucky's secondary and team is kind of bad this year and vibes are not good in Lexington? Just saying, like, they were not that far away from them playing a 3-point game against Arkansas or them struggling against Texas A&M to score points. I don't know. Like, if you really believe that Alabama's all the way fixed, you need to lay these points with ease. You need to be betting the hell out of this game if you really think Alabama is all the way fixed. Because, like, what good games does Auburn have? Against Cal? Like, that looks worse and worse every week. Ole Miss clearly let off the gas, and I don't think Ole Miss is great, but, I mean, they could have won by 28 if they wanted to. They basically just called the dogs off.
You could say Auburn's best win is the Arkansas game, which nearly got Sam Pittman fired.
I mean, Arkansas looks like they just didn't give a damn. I mean, that was a non-competitive effort from Arkansas.
They were still partying in Gainesville.
The Vandy game doesn't look great. LSU was pretty non-competitive. I mean, again, if we think Bama's like a team that's really going to challenge Georgia, they should smoke Auburn. It should be non-competitive because athletically, I mean, that's kind of what you think.
I do have a lock on this game. It isn't for the full game, naturally, but you can get that on Wednesday at 11 a.m. Eastern time for the locks.
Don't you? So, Bud, you sound like you do think there's a chance and that they can come up with a game plan. Because I feel kind of now. I don't like if you said look a headline, I would lay them all day with Georgia versus Alabama in the SEC championship game.
It's 4 right now.
I would lay it.
We got down to 3 a little bit. I bet some at 3. I was like,
yeah, I was going to say I would try to get on that too. I wouldn't hesitate at 4 because I still think Georgia is way better than Bama. But I feel like when I was looking at this game, trying to look at matchups, trying to think, man, like in their most successful games, like I go back to the Georgia game where they had Georgia on the ropes and they were working both quarterbacks, running the quarterback. I feel like Georgia, Tennessee last week when I was like, all right, let me present all these cases. But then you're like, nah, it's just not going to happen. Like I was trying to talk myself into how Tennessee could make it close versus Georgia. And you're looking at like, hey, what's the public reaction is going to be, oh, it's a big number. It's on the road. It's in Knoxville. Like, I feel like the same thing is rivalry game. But I do think New Mexico State, like that loss, I think is going to have the flip effect. Like everybody's on Bama. But I just am trying to figure out scenarios where, and I do think it would have to be them slowing down, low scoring game. Can you condone? Because I'm with you. I do not think I do not think Alabama offensively is fixed. I think they've really played well against way lesser competition. I think Milroe has done a great job. It's been a great turnaround story, but I haven't seen him challenged very much either.
I think we can believe that they are improved. Because Tommy Rees is leaning into what Milroe does better now, and he has stopped asking him to do the things that he can't do or just isn't feel comfortable at doing. I don't want to say can't because that implies you never can, but like currently not successful in doing.
Yeah, Tommy listened to Danny because Tommy Rees is a big Cover 3 podcast fan, and Danny came out like weeks ago and was like, I can tell you what Jalen Milroe needs to do to be successful. And Tommy, because you listened to Danny Cannell, you're a semifinalist for the Broyles Award. So
that's right. Get credit at the speech.
Make sure let's hear some credit given.
I did find out that the our our thing about Jerry Kill, like us noticing that he's been wearing the support the troops gear for like 5 weeks now. He got the Military Appreciation Day gear and never took it off. I heard it got back. So like it's a thing they like to celebrate. So that's awesome. Speaking of staffs who listen to our show, we actually have a surprising number. I don't know, like these guys are busy, but they're not busy enough to miss the Cover 3 podcast. So look, Auburn offensively, this is where I think they have problems. Okay. Like the O-line is not particularly good. Thorne is not a good quarterback at all. Their receivers have not caught the football effectively this year. Like they've had drop problems. They've had problems getting open against one-on-one stuff. Bama's really good in coverage. But don't you have to think that Freeze has been like, how do you mail in that game last week? And all due credit to New Mexico State. Like that's a well-coached team, unique scheme on both sides of the ball. They play really hard. Pavia is a pretty awesome quarterback for what he is. That's still somewhat on Auburn, right? For like not taking that thing seriously.
Yeah, there's 3 or 4 games where I am my antenna is up or spidey sensors are going crazy that we should not overreact to what may have been a sandbagging effort in leading into a game that arguably means more, right? Like that maybe just a little bit more time of prep was being worked on what you're going to do against Alabama than what you're going to do against, as you mentioned, in this case for Auburn, New Mexico State, a super unique scheme where maybe they thought like, instead of spending all this time crunching how we're going to have our counter to it, let's go try to run our stuff and just be better because we have better players. And it just ended up biting them in the ass.
This is 100% Hugh Freeze's MO, by the way. Like I went through and looked at it. He has some of these games where he's a big favorite. Now they usually didn't lose him, but like he would, I don't say if he wouldn't take him seriously, his team would really underperform when they had something big coming up. Like there are some pretty clear examples of it. So, it's now if you look at his Ole Miss thing, it basically is all these 0-win seasons because they had to vacate some wins. But we know the games got played. Don't you think he's got some, like how many points can he scheme up against Bama? Can they get to 20?
Not
that feels hard.
Yeah, that feels hard. I was going to say he can scheme up 2 splash touchdown plays and 3 scoring drives. And I think that's it.
Yeah, so they're going to need turnovers, special team scores, that type of thing, which is possible.
Yeah.
I mean, like Bama on the road has not been especially good for about 3 years now.
Do you know what I was thinking about? The Iron Bowl, it's got so much like history to it. It's got so many great players. One of my just personal favorites from recent history is Quinnen Williams.
Nice.
He's got like awesome personality, was so good. We thought it'd be cool to talk to Quinnen Williams. Let's talk to Quinnen Williams.
Did we get him?
So 11 a.m. Eastern time on Saturday, day of the Iron Bowl, we are going to be hosting a very special pregame hangout for the Iron Bowl. 11 a.m. Eastern time, like our regular recording time, but we're going to be doing it on Saturday. And Quinnen Williams, Alabama great along the defensive line, is scheduled to be one of our guests. We're very excited that we were able to get Quinnen on board. So yeah, we will be asking him his thoughts about this year's Alabama team, this year's Iron Bowl game, and some of his own memories from his time at Alabama. Of course, he was a part of some tremendous teams for the Crimson Tide. It will be great to get his perspective. So again, 11 a.m. Eastern time on Saturday. We'll be hosting it at youtube.com/cover3. It will also be available on Twitter. We will continue to promote that all leading into the week. Saturday, 11 a.m. Eastern time, special pre-game hangout for the Iron Bowl. Alabama great Quinnen Williams will be joining us as well. Very excited for that. Any other sort of final matchup thoughts here for the Crimson Tide and the Tigers?
I mean, how much do you want to show? Like, does Bama need style points?
No.
Are you sure they don't need style points?
I think
they could always use them.
If they look like an absolute killing machine, yeah. Like, because
don't
if Bama's
forget,
got a chance to run it up on Freeze.
don't forget they could be in a scenario,
Right.
even if they win the SEC, where if there's undefeateds, Power 5 champs, and there's 3 of them, and they're comparing resume, and then you have the Texas loss, and Texas is a 1-loss champ. Like, you need every point of emphasis you can get. Like, you want to be able to say because their biggest sell is we are a different team now than we were back in September when we played Texas and lost. Look how much better we are. We just blew out Auburn on the road by 3 touchdowns. Like, I do think it matters. I think they are looking for style points. Although I don't know if Saban's that type. Do you think he is? I mean, maybe if last year all he has to do is think about having to make his case on national champion, during the Fox Big Ten championship game, how embarrassing that was for him.
That was embarrassing. Yeah.
Yeah. He's probably like, man, I don't want to have to do that again. Let me just make my case here on the field.
Still feels like that's a tough ask to just go in there and blast them. Just with.
Yeah, I agree.
With everything that's going on. I mentioned the 2015 game being the outlier. That game was still 29-13. And they had already taken a loss that year too. They were sitting at number 2 going into the game, so they probably felt good about their, chances for the playoff. But that was another one where the goal is to win the football game. Some classic old school football coach type stuff. If it's a double-digit win, if it's comfortable, you're going to be playing field position in the second half.
I do think the start of the game matters because the longer is the underdog in a throwaway season for Auburn, where you just lost in New Mexico State, you're feeling sorry for yourself. They're going to be up for this game. Don't get me wrong, the crowd will be up for it. But if they go down 14-3 early, there does become a quit factor. Like, oh, this is embarrassing. And I think today's player more than ever, you're getting your money, you're kind of used to, whether it's playing PlayStation, you hit reset, like you're just ready to check out. I think you see that way more often now. I do think there's a quit factor in a lot of these games where home crowd is going to be huge. But then you start hearing rumblings, people leaving, like the blowout factor does become real. So you got to take care of them early because the longer they're hanging around, they're believing. They're like, hey, we're still excited. We're still excited to be here. This could salvage our season. But if they start getting run, the quit factor could be real.
100%. Friday, Oregon State.
Hold up. Danny's got to leave. Can we?
Yeah. I'll just get a quick thought on Florida State, Florida, because I'm sure some people may want to hear that. I mean, it's not the biggest game of the weekend, but it is huge for Florida State. I just put a note for you guys in the chat. I think, as far as quarterbacks go, both backups, like don't forget Max Brown is playing in place of Graham Mertz. I would expect and I was mostly a backup throughout my career in the NFL, and I'll never forget Steve DeBerg told me this as a rookie because I was backing up Dave Brown, and I'd gotten in some games, and he would spend extra time just with me going over blitz pickup. Like that's all we worked on. Cause he's like, when you are a backup, they're going to test you early and often. He's like, and if you respond, if you make them pay, or even if you just don't get sacked and it's a first down throw or you extend a drive, they'll stop. Like he gets it. Like we have to be more cautious, but if you don't, they'll keep bringing pressure. So like both of these quarterbacks have to be dialed in with their blitz pickup packages. Like what protections am I solid? Where am I hot? Where am I vulnerable? Where is my quick throw? Where do I need to get rid of the football? And whichever one handles that better will be more equipped to have success in this game. And just an afterthought too, I do think Tate Rodemaker has such a better supporting cast around him of weapons on the exterior. And I do think like you got Johnny Wilson, Keon Coleman on the outside, got Jaheim Bell. Like there's a full complement of characters. But I do think the best thing that Norvell could do is make this a Trey Benson game. Like physicality. Let's get the run game going. Let's take some of the pressure off so that you're in better third down situations, because there's a tendency for a younger quarterback, 3rd and 10, 3rd and 11, to feel like I got to convert this. When I think Jordan Travis would be more comfortable taking a sack, getting 5 yards, let's punt it away. There's always that tendency. I got to get this first. And so you got to keep them out. Both of these quarterbacks, you have to keep them out of those 3rd and long situations.
Awesome. All right, DK, happy birthday.
Got HQ. See you guys. Thank you. Appreciate it. 4-5. Yeah. It's a big one.
Point shaving Danny, trying to shave numbers off.
See ya
later. All right, bud. I thought I was let's stay with this game, by the way, since we're here. I honestly thought I was in a fever dream because I saw Missouri's last drive Saturday Night Live, and we talked about it on the Instant Reaction show. I did not see the full game and sort of piece it all together until Sunday into Monday. I thought I was in a fever dream when I saw that Max Brown was the quarterback. Because you know what I thought? USC and Pitt quarterback Max Brown. Max Brown with an E. I thought we were going to be – I was like, Max Brown still got eligibility? But no, it's not Max Brown with an E. Max Brown, no E, is a former three-star prospect out of Tulsa. So what do we know about Max Brown? What was your evaluation of him?
So I thought he operated the offense for the Gators pretty well. He looks more athletic than Mertz looked. He ran around pretty well, made a couple throws. I think we'll see like a lot of Florida's zone run game and probably some boot action off it. I think I like Florida's outside receivers a little bit better than Danny. I mean, I think Pearsall and Wilson are really nice players. After that, certainly there's a drop off. I don't know that Florida has 3 or 4 pass catching weapons who you love. I think both their backs are really good, Johnson and Etienne. I would expect Florida to try to play a slower tempo game here. I don't think they want to expose their defense to a lot of tempo there. But I think Florida will probably have some success on offense if their offensive tackles play. To me, that's the handicap in this ball game. Because if you don't have Barber and you don't have George, let's refer to our preseason notes. We weren't real high on George anyway, but we knew that Florida took him because their offensive line depth was rather poor. And one place where we know FSU is good is at defensive end. Jared Verse is a really good player, and especially against the run too this year. And Pat Payton has improved a whole lot. I mean, he's rookie of the year last year in ACC, and he's followed it up with a strong season. So to me, that's kind of what it comes down to. Teams don't carry like 3 or 4 good offensive tackles unless your name's like Georgia. So if it's no Barber and no George, I'm a little bit concerned for Florida's ability to block. Now, FSU's also been banged up. Obviously, Renardo Green was in a sling. Deloach's the same. So, we'll see. Like, those are impact guys for you on defense who you may not have. But we'll see how it goes. FSU has faced like 7 straight backup quarterbacks, and so this will be 8. They have done a pretty good job of shutting down backups this year, but Florida has better personnel than almost everybody they've faced, with the exception of LSU, I think. Although Miami's offensive line clearly better than Gators' line with a bunch of backups.
Yeah.
On the flip side,
I was going to say we spent all this time talking about who the next TCU is going to be. It's not a Cinderella. It's a program with 3 national championships.
Yeah, exactly, dude. On the flip side, like, to me, Tate's a clear big downgrade from Jordan. I don't think you'd be like looking at portal guys for quarterback if you thought like you had immense faith in Tate. But I do think that they have enough faith in Tate to where they think they can go score some points here. Florida's defense has been really inconsistent. I think you want to get those guys moving. They have worn down in the second half of some of these games pretty hard. They don't have great D-line depth. So we'll see how FSU's offensive line plays there, and we'll see how Tate plays. I would give Tate early play action shots. Like, establishing the run is cool, but like I want to avoid those 3rd and 10s. And I think if you hit explosive plays, you're okay with some punts. Just need to avoid the turnovers, right? And that's probably their formula for winning. They do have a lot of weapons. Man, Florida's defense, Danny's exactly right. They blitz a ton. I don't know if they have the personnel or should do that, but their pass rush with the down 4 has not been great.
Mm-hmm.
The one DN they have is really good, but the other side is kind of lacking in there. Their interior guys are a little better against the run than they are the pass. So, we'll see if you can hit some early play action shots and how much tempo FSU is able to use. I think the line feels about right. I don't know how you have like a bunch of faith in a backup quarterback to go into the swamp and blow them out. I mean,
it's going to be so sloppy. I'm expecting so many penalties. I mean, It's just the kind of game that if you're Florida State is incredibly nervy, but if you're Florida, all you're trying to do is play spoiler. I'm special team. Give me like over 0.5 special teams defensive touchdowns in this game.
I mean, that's kind of the recipe for it, right? You have athletes and you have 2 backup quarterbacks.
Yeah. Lot of who's gonna do less dumb in Florida
Right.
on a Saturday night,
Is Florida
Thanksgiving weekend.
It's weird to ask this, but like, is Florida's head in this? I'm assuming they are.
I think so.
I think so too, but like, I don't know. There was some weird, just like, maybe that's just who they are as far as mental errors, but like running out of bounds on that last drive, doing the incomplete sign instead of going to tackle the guy on 4th and 17. Like what? I don't know. Some weird vibes.
Last year's game, that's obviously extremely small sample size. Last year's game should not have been as close as it was.
Richardson was awesome.
But like Florida, the whole team looked like they were into it,
Yeah.
like they went into Florida State as decidedly the worst team of the two, but we're like, nah, man, we're here and very much dialed in. And that's my data point that I'm using to think that emotionally, mentally, they're going to get fired up. I mean, you live
How do
there.
you not?
What? Yeah, exactly. Like you live there. Everything.
It's to go to a bowl game, assuming that you want it, right?
Everything that they say about these in-state rivalries where all the guys on the other roster and there's all this familiarity back and forth. You don't want to lose. You want to go out there and perform your best. You don't want to get embarrassed. Come on. Families are watching. All right. Friday night, Oregon State. What do you think Oregon State, after a really tough loss at home in Corvallis, what do you think the path is here? Because again, we're dealing with a situation where they are double-digit underdog. They are on the road in Autzen. Their proximity to Oregon in the rankings is much closer than it is in Las Vegas on the odds board. So, how can the Beavers close that gap against the Ducks?
Can they get some rain again?
No. I've looked at the weather. It does not look like, you always have the potential in the Pacific Northwest of being able to catch a little bit of rain. Even in Corvallis, they weren't expecting it to be that hard until we got a little bit into the game. I don't think that weather will be a huge factor.
They did push them around last game. Last time they played, right? That was Oregon State was like, hey, we're more physical than you guys.
Yeah, Oregon State ran the same running play like 13 times in a row in the second half. The
Dan Lanning, like, hey, they're flash, we're substance type thing. Jonathan Smith could have said that last year going into that game.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Oregon's defense looks better, right? I don't know if their safeties are amazing, so maybe you get those guys in space and make them tackle and maybe you hit them some play action. But I think the weapons on the outside are different for Oregon than they are for Oregon State. And that could be a problem for the Beavers. Oregon also starts fast typically, and I don't think that's something that Oregon State is particularly equipped to deal with. So you need to be the team that starts fast if you're Oregon State. And I don't mean like, hey, go up 17-0, but like get the first score, hold the ball, maybe get a 3-and-out, hold it again, score. That kind of get Oregon off its game script. So that's probably the most important part of it to me. Oregon looks pretty good. They also haven't played a whole bunch of really good teams.
No, I think Oregon State and Washington have faced tougher roads to get to this moment than Oregon has based on the conference draw.
Completely agree. Yeah.
The Oregon defensive line is huge for me. We know that Oregon State's offensive line is a strength and a big reason of why Damian Martinez has been able to be so successful. Also, you get those early down stops. You force DJU into 3rd and long situations, and you're able to get some of your best pass rushers to try to get in there. That the best Oregon's defense has looked is when they just look fast and nasty on both sides of the ball. It's like much love. I've given a lot of, shout outs in the last couple episodes to, not only Bo Nix, but Troy Franklin, but that Bucky Irving, Jordan James 1-2 punch behind one of the best offensive lines in the country. The defensive line being able to just like pin your ears back and get after it. Like that speed and nastiness that Oregon is able to play with at the line of scrimmage is something that makes Oregon special. It's why a lot of power ratings are calling Oregon like a top 3, top 5 team. That's not crazy based on their actual rankings, but the Ducks look like they have been getting better. They were rated as basically the same as Washington on a neutral earlier in the season. Now they're looking like they're about a touchdown ahead of them. To me, that's really what I've seen is the way that they can show their teeth, admittedly, against competition that has not been as good. So Oregon State's offensive line against Oregon's defensive line, keeping DJU from those obvious pass rush situations just seems so big, because that's where it can start spinning out of control, and you're not going to feel as good about your chances to hang in the game if it just starts to go where, Bo Nix is scoring every single time they get the ball. You're always in 3rd and long, and that's where I think they can put you in, say, night pretty early on.
I mean, how many good passing games has Oregon State faced?
I mean,
Washington clearly, but that was in a weird rainstorm.
Right.
Do we define Colorado as still good with how they were blocking at the time? And that was the game that they decided they were going to be a heavy run team. Remember when they demoted Sean Lewis?
Right.
Stanford, no. I think Arizona's a pretty decent passing game. They lost that one. UCLA, no. Cal, no. Utah, definitely not. Like at Washington State, they gave up 38. I am a little skeptical of these Oregon State corners.
I got you. Like, go back to Cam Ward back when Washington State was good.
This is why stats analysis can be tougher to do in college than NFL. Because NFL, everybody has pro level players.
Right.
You can kind of see stuff. Like there's certainly instances where a team gets to week 7 in the NFL and they haven't really played, haven't played anybody. But in college, there's sometimes you only see really high quality athletes twice in a season. So back to our conversation about Ohio State, Michigan, right? Can you block a really good D line? Can you cover good receivers? I think Oregon's got some guys who can really go.
Yeah. Should be a lot of fun. All right. Tuesday night, about 7:30 Eastern time, maybe get started a little bit early with our instant reaction to the new college football playoff rankings. Then Wednesday, 11 a.m. Eastern time for our rivalry week locks. Remember, not Thursday, Wednesday, 11 a.m. Eastern time. We're going to be doing our week 13 locks. Saturday, 11 a.m. Eastern time, special Iron Bowl Hangout live. YouTube.com/cover3. Of course, make sure you're subscribed. Quinnen Williams among the cavalcade of stars that will be stopping by. We're very excited about that. Very excited to let you know. We hope you come join us. And you can follow him on Twitter at BudElliott3. You can follow me at Chip_Patterson. Bud, thank you very much.
Enjoy it, Chip.